Howdy, this is the Views from the Shop podcast. I'm your host, your one and only host, Tim Miller, and today it is Friday, January 24th, 2025, and I wish you a very, very, very happy belly laugh day. Today's show, as always, exclusively presented by College Basketball Analytics. Go to cbbanalytics.com right now, sign up for a free account, or sign up for a paid account, use the code SHOT, that's SCHOTT, SHOT, and you can get an entire month free off an annual subscription, so treat yourself. We use College Basketball Analytics all the time on this show. We're using it for today's show. We will use them forever and ever. Amen. Thank you for being here. So I decided that because I missed some shows, unfortunately, due to some throat ailments, I guess is what I would be listed as. I'm back, and although we're not previewing a game on today's show, we do have a mailbag. So today, we're going to cover some questions that you, the fans, had. I will answer them as best as I can. Now, I must also share that we're going to talk a lot about the bubble. We're going to talk a lot about the NCAA tournament on today's show. Got a lot of content for that, but also just some more random types of questions too that we'll get to today. I'm excited. I love a good mailbag episode, so I think this one will maybe tickle your fancy. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you do get your podcasts, of course. That's important. Leave a 5-star review if you're into that. And if you're on YouTube right now, please like the video, please subscribe, and please leave a comment. Tell me, what do you think? How do you like the weather today? Or do you think Ohio State's going to make the NCAA tournament? Or what are your thoughts on Jake Diebler? Or are you out on the BIP? Do we hate the BIP? Speaking of the BIP, I've got a banger bet, okay? I've got a banger bet. It's not Ohio State related. That'll be at the end of the show for a game tonight. We will give that away as well. I decided I'm feeling generous. I'll give you the stats on the BIP. I will even show them to you on my phone. I'll show you the stats of what we've done with the BIP this year, and then you can decide if you'd like to take the pick that I have for you tonight. Also, shout out to the new camera if you're watching on YouTube. Not necessarily a new camera. I've had this camera for a while. The laptop I had been using didn't like the camera. Things did not look good. My laptop wanted to just be thrown out of my window if I use that camera because it's old. I'm using my work laptop. Don't tell anyone. All right. So thanks for being here again today. Excited to get into it. How about a mailbag? And we start with at OSU B-Ball Enjoyer, who asks, very simple. I love the succinct ability, not a word, is now, of this question. Do you think this squad makes the tournament? Now, I'm assuming NCAA tournament. Fair enough. This could have been, will this team make the Big Ten tournament, the NIT tournament, the CBI, the College Basketball Invitational? How am I to know? I won't judge. I've got some numbers for you, okay? So first of all, let's start at where this team currently stands when it comes to the bubble. So I went and looked back. I was actually kind of disappointed. I thought that if you're a bracketologist, you just update everything every single day. Apparently, that's not the case. Joe Lunardi hasn't updated his bracketology since the morning of the Ohio State Purdue game. So that game is not factored into his bracketology. Therefore, I don't care about it. He has the Buckeyes in the first 4 out category. So I'd assume the next time he updates it, maybe today, wouldn't be surprised, he'll have the Buckeyes in. Same exact scenario for Jerry Palm. Hasn't updated his bracketology since Ohio State's game against Purdue. Now, Bart Torvik Tourneycast. This is as of January 23rd. So yesterday, on Thursday, he had Ohio State as a 9 seed with a 3.8 chance to make the Sweet 16, just so you know. But a 9 seed, that's not in the tournament. That's not really even bubble worthy. That's like, you're in the tournament, Ohio State. Congrats. Look forward to facing Marquette. I don't know. I don't pay attention that closely to other teams that they could play at this point. But all that said, where is Marquette? Marquette plays today, right? They're 13th in KenPom. They will not be an 8 seed. Or I guess they could. They could. It's possible. At this point, no. So that's where Bart Torvik has Ohio State. Others are less optimistic. So I made a list on X this morning of some follows that I have on X who are self-proclaimed bracketologists or are real life bracketologists and just aren't like Jerry Palm or Joe Lunardi, but know what they're talking about. They all have Ohio State kind of in the same category of last four in. Another one that is updated today, last four in. Another one has Ohio State as a 10 seed. So you're still in the bubble at that point, but you're in, and at least you're not playing at Dayton in your first game in the NCAA tournament. Ohio State has also had some progress go in its favor this week. So Wake Forest and North Carolina tipped off, I think, right after Ohio State and Purdue ended, or maybe during the game. That was going to be a bad outcome, regardless of how that game finished, but also a good outcome, regardless of how that game finished, because one team was going to get a nice win and get closer to being inside the bubble. Another team was going to be outside the bubble. And it probably ended up the way that we wanted it to. So Wake Forest beats North Carolina. Wake Forest has now won 6 in a row. They're on fire. North Carolina, with that loss, they have a lot of ground to make up in order just to really get into the real bubble conversation, which is crazy. What North Carolina has done under Hubert Davis and the vast variance in who they are under Davis, it is what it is, I guess, at this point. But North Carolina, they look like they're kind of firmly out of bubble talk at this point. Nebraska, they've lost 5 games in a row. They lost again this week. That does not help Nebraska's cause at all. They're probably on the outside looking in at this point. Iowa lost to Minnesota at home on Tuesday night when Ohio State played Purdue, I believe. And that as well really, really hurts Iowa because that game at home, I think that's a quad 2 game. Definitely not a quad 3 game. That's a quad 2 game for Iowa that you lose. Not good for them. Pitt, a 10 seed according to Palm. They lost to Clemson in overtime. If you want any team to win that's on the bubble right now, it's probably Pitt, because that means Ohio State at least lost to a team that's inside the bubble. So that helps. If you're going to have a loss, you might as well have it be inside the bubble rather than outside the bubble. So Pitt lost this week. They're still firmly a bubble team, I think, at this point. Indiana lost to Northwestern. That's really going to hurt their cause. Indiana's got to win some games in order to get into the NCAA tournament down the stretch here. SMU lost to Louisville this week. Maryland just picked up a marquee win over Illinois last night. Illinois was banged up. The BIP, by the way, was screaming at me to take Illinois plus the points last night. Take a look at the injury report, then we see why. So, all that said, we've had a lot of progress just in the past couple games or past couple days where North Carolina probably out of the conversation at this point. Nebraska is free falling right now. Pitt, you'd like to see them win. Maybe, but they just lost. Iowa losing at home to Nebraska. That's a pretty bad loss for them. Indiana, SMU picking up losses as well. And Texas, by the way, they picked up a nice win over Missouri. I think they're on the outside of the bubble at this point. They need to keep winning as well. So the good thing for Ohio State is that you've got some teams that are starting to fall off the bubble pretty quickly this year. Last year was the exact opposite for Ohio State, where there were a lot of teams on the bubble. And then you had bid stealers, which we'll talk about in a second. But all in all, it's been a pretty good week for Ohio State in regards to other bubble teams just simply not winning. Now, let's talk about bid stealers. Last year, there were 5. You had 1 out of the ACC, you had 1 out of the Pac-12, and then you had 3 others from conferences I cannot remember. Here are the teams that you need to watch for down the stretch that you should probably be rooting for at least one, if not both, to be losing down the stretch and get off the bubble. Boise State. If the Broncos win the Mountain West, you're probably going to have 2 teams out of the Mountain West in the tournament. That's a big-time bid stealer. VCU. If VCU plays its way inside the bubble, and then Dayton, who plays tonight against St. Joe's, if Dayton happens to win the Atlantic 10 and they're outside the bubble, you've got 2 teams in the A10 in. That's a bid stealer right there. Memphis or North Texas, it goes either way. Let's say Memphis wins a bunch of games down the stretch. North Texas gets off the bubble, but then North Texas gets hot and they win the American Conference tournament. North Texas in, Memphis isn't that large. That's a bid stealer as well. And also, don't count out UC Irvine or UC San Diego out west. UC Irvine had an incredibly tight game against UC Riverside last night in overtime. UC San Diego won its game yesterday. If one of those teams happens to play its way inside the bubble, it's possible at this point, if like UC Irvine wins out, for example, maybe they're an 11 seed. And then UC San Diego wins its conference. That wouldn't help Ohio State's cause either. So, do I think that this squad makes a tournament? I'm going to answer that question because someone else asked a similar question later on in the show. But that's kind of the scene for Ohio State right now when it comes to its NCAA tournament chances. The Buckeyes are on the bubble. They are absolutely on the bubble at this point. Will they make it? We'll see. They got a lot of games that they can win that will really help them out. And on the flip side, things are trending in the right direction in terms of other bubble teams losing right now.